You're listening to the Soju Sessions, episode 44 on the Soju Talk Nation podcast feed. I'm your host, Crispy, also known as Crispy Wonton or simply just Anton. And coming up, we've got Alice from the Soju Talk Nation, joins the show for the first time. Yes, one of the OG Gochu Gang members. I found out that she had been listening to the podcast since early 2019. Kind of amazing just how long she's been around for this journey with the crew. And she was incredibly thoughtful and detailed and intellectual about a number of things. I wish I could keep up, but she definitely killed it on this episode. We got to know her journey, her origin story, as well as went over the new releases from this week. We went into great detail, I would say. So we did hit the Tempest song Bad News, Cherry Bullet with Love in Space, and Weekly with Ven Para. So check out that discussion as well. But yeah, I'd like to thank Alice for joining. She was amazing. And let's jump right into it. Coming up, my chat with Alice on the Soju Sessions. Joining Soju Sessions, a new addition to the guest list. A person who has two cats, amazing animals, therapy and life support animals. The one and only Alice. Welcome to the show, Alice.
Hey, Crispy. Thank you.
Yeah, it is a pleasure to have you. I'm very excited. We did talk pre-recording just to kind of set the table, and now I'm super excited. I can't really focus, but I want to get you on to really talk about your journey here with K-pop and the server. So let's get your origin story, Alice. How did you find K-pop? Where did it all begin? And how have you changed over that time?
Okay, so I feel like when it comes to K-pop, I was really circling around it for a pretty long time before I actually landed on it, if you know what I mean. So, about 10 years ago, I got really into K-dramas, and I'd say I've been watching those pretty much nonstop. I've gotten to the point where it's weird for me to watch something that doesn't have subtitles on it. And, if you're watching K-dramas, you're exposed to a lot of K-pop. But it somehow never really got through to me. So, I saw IU in Moon Lovers, and I just thought she was a captivating actress. I had no idea about her musical stature as like a solo artist. And it was like that with OSTs and with a lot of other things too. So, it was kind of in the periphery for me. But everything changed when I ended up going to Korea in 2018 in the summertime, just for like 4 days in Seoul. It was a bit of a random side trip. And you know how it is sometimes if you go to a new country, is that you end up just being super fascinated by it. And that was my experience with Korea, like the richness of the visual culture and how incredibly welcoming everyone was of somebody who did not speak Korean, who was wandering around alone in a strange city. And when I came back, I kind of felt like it was on me to learn a little bit more about the country and the culture. So I had just a lot of curiosity, and I started taking Korean classes. And I don't know if you've ever been in any Korean classes yourself, but I would say about half of the class were people who were really into K-pop. And so that's when I first started hearing about like BTS and EXO and other groups. It was probably mostly BTS and EXO though. And I literally had no idea what K-pop was before then. The whole time I was in Korea, it didn't even register with me. And I had already been listening to a little Korean music that year. So, I had gotten really into Epic High, I really grew up on that kind of old school rap sound, so that was like really not a stretch for me. And I found this like indie group called Say Sue Me that does like surf rock. I don't know if you've heard of them.
I haven't no, but yeah, go on. Go
Oh
on.
yeah, check them out. They're great. And then I heard Tiffany Young's song "Over My Skin," and I love that song. I actually didn't connect it because she's, you know, Korean American. I didn't really connect it with K-pop. I didn't know what SNSD was or anything like that, but I thought it was a great song. And so it kind of started setting the stage for me to get a little bit more into K-pop as a whole. And then what happened, and I can pretty much give you the date, but it was October, and RM's mixtape dropped, Mono. And the day it was released, it was featured on a music blog, and I follow those sorts of things. And I downloaded it because I had a flight that day, and I wanted something new to listen to. So that was kind of it. You know, it's completely up my alley, that kind of music. And when I came home from that trip, I started looking up BTS videos, and I saw Run, and then I saw Fire, and I don't know if the third one I saw was Spring Day or Blood, Sweat, and Tears, but by that point, I was like all the way down the rabbit hole. Um, so that's kind of what happened. And as I got more into BTS, I also wanted to understand the full ecosystem of this kind of genre of musical and artistic production. So I started looking up other groups, and I think maybe Mamamoo was the first like girl group I got a little bit into, and then Monsta X, and then Dreamcatcher, and Red Velvet, and SHINee, and I can go on and on. So that's kind of the start for me.
You told an amazing journey of a story. I do want to touch on real quick on Tiffany Young and the fact that you found her very late, essentially, in her career, relatively, when she was doing her solo stuff and under My Skin. I think that was the song. I loved her later stuff just because it was very light. It wasn't super produced. It was very Western pop. It was her trying to explore what it was going to be like to be a Western pop artist. What was that like for you, going from that sound where it mimicked a lot of the similar, I would say like California, like Western sensibilities in music, and then going into BTS, going into RM and his mixtape, and you know, seeing the very big difference in the style of music, and then how that snowballed into the rest of your fandom?
Mm. Yeah, I mean that's a really good point. I remember the thing that got me into the Tiffany Young song, the reason I checked it out is I read a review of it, and they said that it was a sort of song that Justin Timberlake wished that he had gotten, you know? So it was that very classic kind of groovy sound. And definitely, you know, the way that K-pop sounds is very different, but it's kind of the same way that I find K-dramas to be so addictive. It's that, you know, with a K-drama, it's not really generic in the same way that an American drama might be. So it's multi-generic. So you can have a K-drama that's like a workplace comedy and a, you know, romantic drama, and also like a historical vampire thing going on with it. And that's kind of what I like about K-pop too, is that it has this sort of audacity of taking a lot of different Western and Eastern musical forms and kind of putting them together and seeing something new emerge. And that for me was something that was very energizing about K-pop, along with the intensity of the visual production, the symbolism, and that's of course something that BTS is very rich in, but a lot of other groups do. And the choreography, you know, you can't resist the dancing.
Yeah.
So it really wasn't hard for me. You know, it didn't seem that strange at that point. The other thing, of course, is, you know, K-pop emerged from like New Jack Swing and all of these sort of genres of American pop music that I grew up with. So it didn't seem totally different to me.
I love what you said about audacity to try different styles of music. And I think that is kind of the unique quality of K-pop, where it's just an exaggerated form of a lot of different sounds that have already existed, right? I think it eventually has evolved where there are specific K-pop sounds over the years that then get reincorporated into newer stuff. But I think what you said about New Jack Swing being kind of the initial starting point for a lot of the music, and then evolving and then adapting what was trending at the time. I can remember in 2012 when EDM was it. Everyone wanted to go to a rave. So then what happened? Psy popped off and made everything EDM. And then Big Bang and 21 were like the kings and queens at that time. And then everyone did a version of that EDM sound. And then even today, where we have retro funk, I think we're going on 3 years now of that trend. I kind of still want it. Not gonna lie. I kind of love it still, but I can also see where that trend is starting to decline, and that just means we're going to get something new, something inspired by something old, something familiar, but also with a new twist to it. I wanted to go into the thing that you said about reviews and kind of experiencing K-pop online and kind of widening your scope of what the genre, the medium provides, right? Can you go over kind of the initial days of you finding different resources to expand and illuminate K-pop for yourself?
Well, the first was Twitter, I would say. I got onto Twitter actually so I could see more K-pop stuff. I mean, the other thing about me is I had never been part of any fandoms. I hadn't really participated in that kind of a collective experience of supporting an artist. So that was also something that was really new to me and kind of exciting. Obviously, it has both positive and negative aspects, and there are parts of it that I've like backed off of. But yeah, Twitter was a really big space for that. You know, I think one of the things that I'm always looking for, and maybe this is also a little bit of one of the great things about the pod, is that I'm looking for people who really understand the genre and can talk about it knowledgeably and are passionate about it, but are also able to be like critical of even their faves. And I think that that's one of the things that for me is always like the litmus test. Like, can you admit that maybe somebody's like recent song wasn't it for you? Because I think that that's the thing about experimentalism, is it's not always going to hit, or it's not always going to be, you know, as audacious as it should be. You know, sometimes it is playing it safe and just keeping with the trends. So, I really appreciate being able to find people who can be critical about it, but also know it. And I think that's definitely something, you know, being in the West and reading mostly English language K-pop reviews, is that a lot of the time it's either people who are just total fans and they're not really engaging with the music critically, or they are, you know, people who think that K-pop has something to prove and they have a very rigid idea about what K-pop is, and it's kind of this monolithic understanding of what it is that has no understanding of how it's evolved over time. They don't think about the different sort of pockets of K-pop that have bucked trends or have tried new things or have, you know, been a little bit more experimental. And so I think that's one of the things that, that's always just hard to find. And I keep looking for better resources myself.
Yeah, no, it's a wonderful place to be in Soju Talk, right? I think Doug, Warren, and Anita bring a level of thoughtfulness with how they experience music, how they experience K-pop, and all of the different complementing elements, whether that's the visual, with the music videos, the concepts, the outfits, the choreography, editing, sound design, everything. Warren kind of went into great detail over the past few weeks of a number of different groups. We'll touch on those a little bit later, but I did want to ask, I did kind of want to bring up this idea of the starting point in which the crew talks and analyzes K-pop and music. I think for me, what I noticed from them is that there is a fundamental understanding of culture and history with K-pop. Doug has mentioned that he, has reconnected with his culture because of it. And Warren is an immigrant, right? He's born in Korea, and then he came over. So he's a fob like me. He came over and kind of incorporated himself into the Western culture while also retaining a lot of who he was as a person, as a Korean person. But then you have Anita, who is a longtime fan, but I think because of her relationship with the two of them, she was able to kind of see that perspective and then incorporate her own culture into it. So my question for you is, with your own personal background, your own personal history, it's very unique. How were you able to draw parallels to your own personal experiences with everything you learned about K-pop through different cultural exchange moments? And what were those cultural exchange moments?
Well, I think one of the things that it took me a while to get into were girl groups. And it's partially because sort of the portrayal of girls and femininity in K-pop is not always something that really speaks to me. It can be very like I was really not into the sort of aegyo concepts, and that's probably why Mamamoo was an entry point for me, is because they tended to do a little bit less of that. So it took a while for me to learn to appreciate that. My own experience growing up, I'm from the Midwest, pretty, white, not a huge Asian population when I was growing up, although that certainly changed. And not really a big like Korean population. But I went to school in New York, and I had always, for me, and I guess this goes back to my interest in traveling, is just that I think that the more you encounter other cultures, the more you have to kind of have this questioning of your own culture. It really makes you think about your own values. And for me, this is why I believe in traveling, and I believe in exploring media from around the world. I mean, in addition to Korean music, I also love lots of different music in different languages and from different countries. And so, I think that in a way, it can be a very safe way to experience another culture. Like with K-pop, you're seeing something that has been in some ways marketed to Western audiences. It's not like listening to like Pansori or something, where it's going to be a very unfamiliar sound. And so I think it is something that gives people a chance to really engage. But then there's always those sticking points, right? Like with K-pop, and I see this with Western audiences all the time, where, they don't know why an idol is being canceled for one thing, but not for another. There's always that sort of tension. And I've heard Warren talk about it very well, as sort of that tension between international fans and Korean fans, because there's sort of different expectations of how idols will behave. I don't know if I'm going way off base here, if that's really what you're asking about, but it is something that's very interesting to me.
No, it's an important point to keep in mind, right? Just because we do come from different cultural backgrounds, different points of view, and different reference points. Mm-hmm. I think it is all relative in a lot of ways. Even though, yes, like there is a level of morality that we'd like to uphold as far as being consumers, but we also have to kind of have empathy with how another perspective would see things. Just because it's not something we live in every day. I think for me, I try to be very mindful of the fact that I am not Korean. I have never been to Korea or lived in Korea. Even though I'm a big fan, and I've grown up with Korean families. Like my closest friends I've grown up with since 8th grade are Korean, and they bring me into their house for barbecue since I was 12 years old. But I would never imagine myself I guess appropriating that culture, right, and really understanding. But I still would like to think that I can be objective with how I respond to something that is different from me, right? And it's about exposure. Yeah. I think that is like the crux of your total experience, right? And the fact that you traveled, the fact that you've seen the world in a number of different ways that I would love to one day. Maybe we should have a travel show. Alice Travels the World. I think that would be amazing. But unfortunately, the pandemic has put a halt to a lot of that for a lot of people. I think there is a generation of kids who will grow up not having travel as a priority in their life. Strange as that may be, right? But I think as the world starts opening up, we'll start to have those avenues. The substitute over the past 2.5 years has been the internet, has been Discord, has been the Soju Talk K-pop podcast community on Discord. How'd you find it? And what was it like to kind of, live on Discord and be in the space to grow your fandom, but also kind of provide some support over the past year and a half when we were so disconnected from other people? What was that like to kind of find that family online?
I mean, it was very reassuring. So, I started listening to the podcast, I would say probably like early 2019. And at that point, I was probably only listening to like the episodes or segments that were talking about like either BTS or another group that I was getting into at that point. And later, I think I went back and I've probably listened to every episode by now. But, when the pandemic happened and we were all getting sort of locked into our screens, it definitely did make me really appreciate the fact that there is this sort of weekly presence of a group of people who were talking about stuff that I was interested in and who were, vibing with each other and were able to talk about what was actually happening in the world. I mean, we were talking about COVID, but keeping it pretty light and keeping it pretty positive, but being real about it. And the Discord server, I'm trying to think like when I got into it. I think I probably first created an account about the time I became a Patreon, but I sort of lurked for a long time. I was really interested in what people had to say, and I'm very aware that there are a lot of people, on the server who are really knowledgeable about K-pop and really know all of the artists in the groups. It's one thing about me is there's probably 4 or 5 groups that I know pretty well and where I know all the members, but then there's this huge list of groups where I love their music. I look for their comebacks. I follow them, but if you ask me what to name the members, I wouldn't be able to. I just don't have that kind of relationship with them. So it's great to have the diversity of a community where everybody's enthusiastic about somebody, and it brings me into their enthusiasm. I know that definitely there are people who have gotten through some really tough times in their lives by connecting with each other on the server. And I think it's really fantastic because it's just great to have a space where everybody has this one common thing that they love. But other than that, they're coming from really different perspectives and places. And I think that really the crew sets the tone in being so respectful of each other and so respectful of different opinions, because I have to say, like, it's very refreshing to be on the server and to see people who are having really good, nuanced, interesting conversations about what they do or don't like about a certain song or comeback or whatever, and be really respectful of each other, and then also be able to talk about what they ate for dinner or what they're gonna, where they're gonna go the next day or what kind of shoes they want to buy. And it's kind of a fun mix.
Yeah, no, I think, and I can kind of loop this back to this idea of flexibility that you mentioned earlier, kind of to counter the rigidity that we see on the internet sometimes. I think when you are able to have an immediate response from someone to interface, whether that's on a voice call or even just text in a server channel, I think it's really important to build that relationship. And I think it's at least been a great substitute for kind of the things we've been missing over the past few years, and kind of just to maintain some level of social semblance with regards to K-pop. And I think that's been a really important thing to not only grow my experience, but to grow kind of the friendships that I've gotten on the server. Yeah, and I think what you said about the crew setting the tone is right on. Like, it's very on point with not just how we talk about K-pop, but what we talk about, and then the main show kind of being a great shining example for that. So with that said, let's get into some music. Let's talk about this week in Soju Talk music. So we had 3 new songs. I'm gonna throw them at you, and then I wanna see where you're gonna go with it. So the crew discussed Tempest with Bad News, Cherry Bullet, Love in Space, and Weekly with Ven Para. All right, Alice. Well, let's start with Tempest. It's a boy group. I will just say right off the top, I too really like this song. This is probably my favorite song of the week. Surprise, everyone! It is not a girl group. What did you think about this song and the debut of Tempest? And the kind of the return to light and fun, because I feel like we've gotten a little bit of a dark spree consistently over the past few weeks. What did you think about this song coming in at this time, Tempest with Bad News?
It was such a breath of fresh air for me, and I think, so full disclosure, I think for my chart, I had Billy at the top, mainly propelled by the incredible live stages I've been watching. And also, like, Ginga Minga Yo has been very catchy and infectious for me, whether in a good or bad way, I don't know. I'm not sure if it'll be on my chart next week, but it was this week. And Tempest was on my chart too. And when I watched it, for one thing, I had sort of like lost touch with what happened with Island. I watched Island, but I didn't know what happened to like Hanbin, like my dude Hanbin, like such a sweet kid. And when I saw that he was in Tempest, I was like really happy for him, living his best life and thriving. But yeah, Tempest was it's really like an absolute by the books playbook of what a debut should be. It was bright, it was sunny, it was really spirited. I feel like even the lyrics were like a thesis statement, like, we're delinquents, we're fun, join us on our adventures. And it was very engaging, and I did end up watching a stage. The choreography is great, they're young, but they're not. This is another thing I like, is that none of them are like really young. I think their maknae is like 19 or something. So it's not like a bunch of little kids. And yeah, I mean, it's a fun song. It is, I would say, and I agree with maybe a little bit of what Warren was saying, where he was admitting that he was being a little nitpicky, but that it is a little basic, but it's also classic. So, it's something where if you wanted to have like a checkbox of like what you want to do for a debut, I think that they hit it. They hit the mark.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Really quick, I had Billy, Ginga Minga Yo, number one. No surprise to anyone who just even a little knows me. But with Tempest, I was surprised. So my initial chart, I don't think I had them on, but I think over the past few days, listening to it a little bit more and then revisiting all the songs, I think it's nice to give songs some time, right? I think when you're kind of put into a situation when you got to make a vote with less information than you would have a day to 2 days later, you're going to vote a certain kind of way. So I did not have them initially, but after a week now, I gotta say, they are very refined. They are having fun. I think the Hanbin inclusion is a nice like sticking point for a lot of people. I recommended this music video to a friend of mine who is a big BTS and TXT just hype fan. So not like expansive on K-pop, but just loves BTS. She did not like Island because she didn't like the way it turned out. So she didn't follow and hype in. She is Vietnamese. So I said, hey, do you know your boy is here? And she did not. And now she is following them tremendously. She loves them. So I'm so happy to give that to her as a gift. With the song, though, I think you hit it right on. It's a great introduction. It's a great debut. For me, it's kind of like your freshman year project, right? Where, you're young and experienced and, you're not expected to write this dissertation, right? You're not expected to run these elaborate experiments and take survey data. You have a basic set of skills. You're pretty good at them, and then you hit every benchmark. And I think that's what this debut feels like to me. They did a lot of the old K-pop type tropes with the brightness and happiness. I think it's a good switch because we've got a lot of darkness and heavy coolness over the past few months. Some turn out better than others. Yeah. But yep. I will just say, I think this was a nice, refreshing song relative to the other releases we've had this year, and a good debut because I think it's a nice way for them to separate, distinguish themselves from the pack as far as boy groups go this year. Yeah.
So did you watch Produce season 2? Do you know any of the guys from that?
I do not. I admittedly only watched Produce 101. I actually skipped Produce 48. Sorry, IZ*ONE fans. And then I watched Produce season 5. Is that what we're calling this? Girls Planet 999.
So I've only watched Island. I don't watch survival shows typically, and I feel like I understand why they do them. I get it, because it really changes your level of investment in a group. And it also changes your level of investment in the other trainees. And, but yeah, it's just one of the things I've noticed is that it comes up a lot in the pod is like who comes out of which show. And I feel like I need to catch up on Girls Planet now.
I will just say it's pretty good up until a point. But I think you understand when that point happens. If you follow a little bit of what the crew thought, I will say Kep1er, they're getting work. They're going to be on Queendom 2. But wish them all the best.
So I did watch Queendom 1, and I thought that was an amazing, amazing season. I have no idea what 2 is going to be like. I know Kep1er's inclusion is a little controversial. I'm still bitter Dreamcatcher isn't part of it. But yeah, so that's one of the things that that I'm always curious about is like how these shows end up happening. And but Queendom's different, right? Because they're groups that have debuted. They're artists that are already out there.
Yeah. But with any of these survival shows or reality shows, I think they're all kind of included in the same idea of exposing these artists, these musicians, these idols, whether or not they've debuted already, to the general audience, the general public. And I think between Produce and Island, I think, it's a nice starting point for at least people to see them and then hopefully to follow their careers and kind of grow into being fans. And I think that's kind of what happened with Cherry Bullet. The crew mentioned the 3 members of Bora, Jiwon, and May getting a little bit more screen time in Love in Space. Well, first question for you, did you notice a little bit of extra emphasis on those members? And how do you feel like those members were handled with this release?
Oh man, I'm not the one to ask about that because I'm not as familiar with the members of Cherry Bullet. I really like Love So Sweet. I think for me that's like their superior track. But this was a fun song, but I didn't really focus on it as much this week. And I did put it into my chart. I think I actually gave it second or third. I don't remember how it like all laid out, but yeah, I'm not as familiar with the individual members. Are you?
I would say yes, kind of. So I did know a number of members, but I wasn't super invested in the entire group until a little bit before Girls Planet 999. And then, of course, because of the show, then we got to know Bora really well. We got to know Jiwon and May, who Bora and May made it very close to the end of the show. So it was a nice way to follow their journey. And then kind of seeing how this song played out, they are very much front and center with the stage and the song. Just really quick, I do like this song, but there are some elements where it's just like I guess this was their way to try to distinguish themselves doing retro. Specifically, the opening verse of very, very fast singing, a lot of words.
Yeah, it was really like kind of a turn of the Millennium Club vibe I was getting from that song. Like VIP section, like very fancy, bottle service, but not really a place that's quite my vibe. And I think it felt a little manic to me.
That is a great word for it. I think that encapsulates a lot about that section in particular, but also how that permeates throughout the song, right?
Mm-hmm.
I do generally like it. I'm trying to give it a listen a little bit more throughout the week to see where I ultimately land on it. But I think the music video is very gorgeous. They're very, attractive and pretty ladies. And I think they did a nice job at least highlighting them between the editing and kind of the concept, right? But I do have a thing to say about the concept, which I will save for the next song.
I might be saving a similar thing about that concept for the next song. Let's go to it.
Well, let's jump into it. So we've got Weekly with Ven Para. Got a girl crush concept shift. I think I ultimately do agree with this positive point in that a concept shift in it of itself is not a bad thing. It's not negative. Sometimes it's what you got to do to refresh the group or do something different. It's a creative leap, which I can commend the creative team for wanting to do that. But the song itself on first listen was very difficult to listen to, and I could not understand why for a number of reasons. I just didn't have the ear for a lot of the things that were problematic until Warren went into his moment and really broke down all the different musical elements. I'm not going to repeat a lot of what he said just because he goes into great detail, and I want to make sure that I preserve his thoughts as his own. But I think just the way that the song was put together was very eye-opening once Warren was able to kind of put words to each section that was problematic. Alice, how do you feel about the song, and what do you think about Weekly now with their concept shift?
Okay, well, first off, I do want to give them some credit for going into the Spanish language. Like Ven para acá, it's great. I actually really do like that. I think that it shouldn't always be English. That's the sort of non-Korean language that's employed. But with Weekly, I have to grade them by their previous output as well. And After School and Holiday Party were so much better, in my opinion. Obviously, After School was incredible. I'm basically waiting for summer so I can put it back into rotation again. And yeah, I don't know if we need more girl crush themes, especially for a group that has established itself so well with other concepts. I'm not the production expert, but I after hearing Warren talk about it, I do think I understand what he was saying. And yeah, it seems like the girls were not done well by with the production. But it's also the concept. I do think, once you have a really good, once you have a good concept going and once you have a good theme going, I don't necessarily think you need to change it up that much. I think about GFriend or Dreamcatcher, and they might be foraying out of it a little bit sometimes, but they generally know their core area and they know what their audience wants. And I hope that they're doing stuff that they also enjoy. So I don't know if you really need to switch around concepts that much as a group, actually.
Yeah, and I think that's where I landed with the song, right? Where I think the song for me, with all the things that Warren said, very clearly, these are kind of the problematic points of the song. But I think there is something that could be enjoyable about the song if you attach the character of the idols, the members, right? I think there are a number of songs where they fall flat, but because you have an investment with who they are, it's okay, right? It's just another song in their discography that's a bit of a switch up, but it exists and you're okay with at least listening to it for them. I think for me, I think the way that my big takeaway from the entire release is that I am space fatigued. Let me reiterate. Let me repeat that. Space fatigued. Okay, so I'm going to list these girl groups who did a space concept or are a space fantasy concept. Wooju Sonia, Luna, Everglow, Kep1er, Woo-ah, and VVZ. All of these groups are either in space or have done a space concept in the past less than a year. I would say 8 months, 6 months. And I am just kind of exhausted with that in general. And I don't know what the creative team was thinking, that they can incorporate not only a music shift but a concept shift and now an inclusion of lore during a time when we are incredibly saturated with girl groups doing this very similar concept. I think that is a failure of market research. It's a failure of just general research. And I think I would have been okay with this song if there was a little bit more attention to detail on that, because I'm the person who is a full visual experience K-pop consumer, right? Where I want to know more about the music video. I like to see the editing. I like to see the cinematic process, kind of the story. I will even say the music video, the editing is really bad. It's really bad. There are a lot of moments where you think you're going to get a specific shine spot, specific spotlights on one member, and it cuts immediately to something else. And I'm like, why? What are we doing here? And then it cuts to these planets. And apparently there are 7 planets because 7 days of the week, or 7 like astral bodies. And I'm like, I don't know what's happening. My brain really hurts. So this is what I can speak on. I can speak on to the ability to visually tell a story. And I think that, in addition to the song, were both poorly executed.
Well, it was also a little apocalyptic, right? Like, wasn't there some whole supernova happening behind them in the opening shots? Like, I'm not sure. But thank you for noting the space theme. I have a slightly different take on it, because I am a fan of a good space theme. And I'm wondering, would you blame this on IU and like Strawberry Moon? Did she start this all?
I don't know if she started it, but I will say Weekly is continuing it because it's just, well, they're doing Girl Crush in Space, which we've now seen 6-7 other groups do in less than a year. And now it's like, I don't know where to place this, in addition to the fact that the song's not well produced, right? I can probably overlook the poor production of the song with just this song just being a background song. If I also was able to separate, it's like, oh, but at least they're doing something a little bit different than the trend. No, they're doing exactly what everyone else has done. I was like, okay, then I don't know where they stand.
Right. I mean, do you guys remember, or did Holiday Party kind of have an outer space theme? But it wasn't like a scary one. This is more of like a scary one.
Yeah, it was more, so I think it was Holiday Party. I forget which one has the big cats.
Yeah.
But it's fantastical. Yeah, right? They're dreaming about like being in space, but space travel with their friends, but they're still very much teenagers. They're very much styled as kids. This one is they're in a room, and then the room changes to celestial bodies and like planets and suns and stars and stuff, and it's like, okay, there's a lot happening here. Yeah, but you know, to kind of zoom out and kind of be a little bit more positive with Weekly in general, I think there are 3 members that do stand out that this could work for them. And I hope that the other members can also find their way. I think they mentioned it on the show. So it's Monday, Zoa, and I have Soen. I think she has blue hair in the music video. She, I feel like she was okay in the song, as far as like performing it and being within the concept. But again, I think you have to smooth things out. You have to allow all the members to kind of fit within what direction you're going in. And it kind of felt like it just didn't work for everyone, in addition to the other things.
I do think that the next time they come back, they'll probably have some kind of a summer comeback, right? And it'll probably be pretty different from this, I'm guessing.
Yeah, no, I hope at least I hope that it's more mentally cohesive, because cohesive can mean a number of things, but at least for me, as long as there's a clear direction, a creative direction, whether that's a visual direction or a musical direction or a concept direction, something that I can say, I can overlook any of the mistakes or the shortcomings, then that's okay. With this release, I don't feel like there is that for me. And I think it pains me, because I did really like Weekly being so different from the norm.
Yeah, I mean, we've had this really great crop of sort of young rookie girl groups in the past 2 years, and it's kind of been a bright spot in this dark COVID landscape. So I'm not really looking for a girl crush theme or anything dark these days. I'm ready to throw away winter time and look towards the spring and get that kind of bubbly, upbeat, fun concept again for sure.
Yeah. And I don't think I mentioned this, but Cherry Bullet, the song is literally Love in Space. So
Yeah, exactly.
more
And
space.
what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that space. You remember, like, was it summer 2020 where everyone was doing like disco western themes?
Mm-hmm.
I think right now it's like, wacky space themes, and I don't know what it says about the world today. Like maybe it just means we're all, like reading about what's happening with climate change, and we're like, okay, it's obviously we're jetting,
We're done with
but
this planet. I don't want to live
yeah,
here anymore.
this is dunzo. But I think that there's this like element to it that's very yeah, it is very kind of sci-fi, and it has potential. I mean, I like sci-fi, but I'd like it to be a little bit more interesting than this. I agree with you. And yeah, I mean, it's at a certain point you have to distinguish yourself.
Yeah. But if you like this song, you're a fan of Weekly, and you're okay with this, feel free. Because I think, again, if you just put this on a song with other Girl Crush, a playlist with other Girl Crush songs, it's fine, it fits, and it's to each their own. Because I think K-pop is open like that. I think, like you said earlier, it's the tone set by the main show, by the crew, that we are open to having these types of critical analysis and discussions about it from different points of view. And I do appreciate that you are very open to talking about things like that, Alice, and letting me go because I felt a kind of way. I'll just say that.
Yeah, no, I mean the thing, we're coming from a place of love, right? Like we want to see these people succeed. We know they're working hard. We want to see them make good music. We want to love the music they make. So I'm always it's kind of like being a sports fan, right? Like you want to see them, play their best game and use their team in the best way possible. So it's always a little frustrating when it doesn't quite come together.
Yeah, no, well said, well said. All right, Alice, we're going to move into some closing thoughts now, just to kind of check in with you. So, K-pop has been a very important, integral part of our lives. But, we like to look forward and we like to see, what's on the horizon. Spring is on the way. What are you looking forward to as the weather gets warmer and as the year continues to move forward? What are some things that you are looking forward to for the remainder of the year?
Well, one thing is live performances and concerts. Everyone's coming to the US these days. I'm in New York, so I do have a certain amount of privilege with that. So I don't have to travel. They all end up, more or less coming here. And live music is so amazing. I'm not as much of a K-pop consumer in terms of buying like merch or even albums a lot of the time. I'd rather try to go see the live performances, especially because again, I'm lucky enough to live in a city where I can. And yeah, and sometimes I feel like if I've seen an artist live, it really changes my perspective on the artist. It makes me like really fall in love with them. So I'll go see groups that I'm like casually into, and then I'll walk away and just be like, have a whole new appreciation for them. So I'm hoping we'll see a lot of concerts. I'm going to Epic High. I'm going to get to see Monsta X after like 2.5 years this summer, I hope. So I'm looking forward to basically trying to see every live performance possible. And then there's a ton of really exciting comebacks in the next few weeks. So probably going to be shouting about those on Discord. Red Velvet, I feel like we need to talk about this concept because it's very promising. Again, as somebody who is Red Velvet's probably one of my ultimate top 3 girl groups. And I did not love their last comeback. I love that they came back, but it wasn't, really up there for me. And so far, these concept photos, like, did you saw the ones that dropped last night or yesterday, I guess, with oh my God, they're beautiful.
I will just quickly say the perspective and what they're doing with the wind up doll like visual, evoking that kind of visual story is brilliant. I think it's a work of art. I just like, for me, I'm a very visual person, so when I saw that, I was like, whoa, my brain explode.
Yeah, and to me, it signals it's going to be some of that slightly like off kilter, slightly weird, slightly spooky, haunted vibe that sometimes they do, and which I really appreciate. And I'm kind of thinking it might be a Red concept. Like they may be getting the jump on the summer releases with a March release that starts to look at the spring, and is a little spooky and a little weird. I don't think they're going into space, so there's that. And so I'm really excited about that. I'm excited about the sound. I'm next couple of weeks I'm going to be like checking in on them a lot. Yeah, so there's that. Also the NCT Dream, because Hello Future was such a big hit. I think they have, they're going to have a lot of expectations on this comeback, especially after that. At least for me, because I really loved Hello Future. And I've been looking at the Stray Kids comeback. I think that's going to be really incredible. But, looking out into the future too, like Big Bang is coming back apparently. And that's kind of big. One thing I've gotten more into like second generation groups. And I don't know what that's going to be like. I don't know if it's going to happen for sure, but I'm excited about it.
Yeah, no, you said a lot of incredible music coming up. I think the other one that I am definitely looking forward to is Oh My Girl. I have just Oh My Girl has my heart in so many ways. I'm just very happy that they are coming back. Happy that they're coming back, but also I think we're kind of a little spoiled with just how much music is coming out in March. So I don't really know where to like emotionally place myself. I think I echo everything you said about Red Velvet. I think it's gonna be super cool, super dark and kind of funky. But yeah, let's get a little bit of a Red Mare situation. I'm ready for it.
Yes, please. What do you think about the IU J Park collaboration that's apparently coming out like in a couple days?
Yeah, no, I saw the news header, and I think it was Ara who messaged me about it. I'm going to stay away from like anything just so that I'm not like expecting. But I think if what I read was true or what I heard was true, it's just gonna be a lot of English in the song, I believe. Maybe.
Really?
I could
literally all I've heard is that there's going to be a collaboration. I don't know anything else about it.
Yeah, I could be wrong. I think I might have misremembered or misread that. But if there's going to be English and it's IU doing English and it's J Park, my brain cannot handle, because those are great musicians who speak to the old folks on the server. So I am one of the old folks. I mean, being 90 years old, you kind of see everything. So
I know we've been through all of it, haven't we? We've been through the wars. But no, I mean, I think it's going to be really fun, and I wonder if it's going to be like a little trolly, like a little sassy in the concept, because J Park and certainly IU has it in her to be a little sassy sometimes. So yeah, really curious about that. I think it's going to be interesting. And then another thing, I mean, nothing's been announced, but I'm assuming there's going to be a BTS comeback, and I feel like I wouldn't be doing my army duty if I didn't say I was excited about that, especially because, I think the last couple of years during COVID, they've been kind of in a different track. And it's my hope that this is going to be kind of back into the whole era of work that they've been doing, where they're kind of plugging back into this whole journey of maturation and individuality and what it means to be yourself vis-a-vis society and all these other things that they tend to like touch upon. So I'm excited for some like really lots of lore, lots of like visual concepts, hopefully some like complicated choreography, something like that. Yeah. But I have no idea when that's going to be announced.
It would be very timely for them to end Permission to Dance, the Vegas show series, with a brand new song. with kind of just like, hey, look, we're done with Permission to Dance. Here's a new song, either like premiered at the show or, you know, just a follow up a week or two later just to continue the BTS hype train. Because I mean, that's marketing 101, right? Just like as soon as you think the conversation's over, nope, we got a new song. And I think that would be kind of brilliant.
No, I mean they're like a juggernaut. The hype train never stops with them, and that's one of the things where it's like kind of exciting to be a fan. But I'm also, again, like I'm always looking for. I'm excited for their like solo outputs. You know, I think there's going to be a J-Hope mixtape coming at some point. I know there's been a Kim Taehyung mixtape discussed for quite a long time. So, you know, that's another thing I'm always curious about, and I don't know what your thoughts are on this. It's like when artists in a group do solo work, I think sometimes it's really interesting to see. Like it's sometimes it's my favorite work that they're doing. So yeah, I don't know. Do you think that? Like, do you see that with artists who like are in a group and also do solo work?
Yeah, I think the artist that comes to mind, and this is gonna surprise everyone, is Kai. So I'm not a big EXO fan. I know their songs. I know they're very large, or they're very like important cornerstone pieces throughout K-pop over the years. But just overall, you know, I'm just there. But when Kai did his solo stuff, starting with and now Peaches, I love those two albums. Absolutely love them. So for me, I think it's a great way for them to explore a different avenue, different way, different expression of music. And you know, if it's something that I connect with, then I will just listen to it repeatedly because I think it also stems from the fact that it's very much R&B, like very smooth R&B. So for me, that's my genre that I love just being in. And I agree that I think it allows them to do something different from what they're known for and hopefully bring in a different fan base or to kind of just accentuate the fan base they already have. Because I honestly, before I could not tell you anything about Kai, and now I love his music. He might be my favorite EXO member. Crazy.
I get it. Like I just thought of him as being an incredible dancer. I didn't think of him as being much of a vocalist, and I really like the solo vision he's developed. For me, you know, I would say that Bam Bam going solo has been really surprising to me because I don't, you know, I'm not a huge GOT7 fan. I mean, I don't follow them a ton. I certainly like love a lot of their tracks. I'd love to have more JJ Project come back for sure. But when Bam Bam started doing solo work, I was like, who is this kid and why is he so incredible? Like there's something about it that's so like individualistic and quirky and fun and sunshiny, and maybe I'm just looking for positivity in music, but that was really working for me. So yeah, like you, sometimes I'll find a solo artist will kind of pull me into a group more.
Yeah, no, I very much agree with that sentiment where you are pleasantly surprised and then you continue on in that journey to get more. That's K-pop, right? It just leaves you wanting more, to inject it into your veins.
Yeah, and then they always give you so much more and you're like, wait a second, it's too much.
Right? It never ends, but we kind of love it, and that's what we're that's what we're very grateful for. Alice, I'm very grateful for you and for being on the show. Thank you so much. This was an incredible conversation.
No, Crispy, this has been tremendous fun, and I'm really grateful you gave me a chance to, you know, rant about some of the things that I love or don't love sometimes in K-pop, and I'm again really excited. We'll keep talking about the Red Velvet comeback on the server. Okay.
Absolutely, yes. There is a Red Velvet thread. We have threads now, so check out that on the server, everyone. If you have a favorite group, chances are there's a specific place that you can go to talk about them. But Alice, you know, we will have you on eventually again because you are a delight. You have so much to say, and you let me do my thing. You know, you let me talk about abstract art stuff, and I can't appreciate you anymore for allowing me to kind of wax the opposite of poetically, I guess, towards certain topics today. But yeah, no, thank you so much.
Yeah, no, anytime you want to give a TED talk about visual concepts, I will be happily in the first row of your audience.
You are amazing. All right, let's sign out. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Soju Sessions on the Soju Talk Nation podcast feed. Subscribe on YouTube, follow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts, and continue the conversation on the Soju Talk K-pop podcast Discord. For Alice, this is Crispy, and this has been the Soju Sessions.